Can you take a picture of yourself? So
Don't get a picture of Amy like this.
Alright, today I'm going to be talking to you about the sport of horse reining. It's a sport about showcasing an extremely broke horse. In other words, a very finished, very well trained horse. It's showcasing them in a relaxed manner and having them do maneuvers at the rider's command with very little sign from them. I myself do not partake in the sport, but my friend Steve Ecker has owned horses for many years and himself has been reining horses for over 3 years now. I'll be talking to you about what makes a reining horse, the patterns they run, and some of the milestones in the sport. Reining horses, temperament. The temperament comes from the trainability of them, the way that they respond to how well they're trained. The bloodlines can also be a good part of it. And then, the bad temperament part. It basically goes the opposite part, how badly they're trained, different stuff like that. If they're spookable, if they're nervous with it, they can also be harder with it. Then we come to the physical abilities, or the physical attributes of them. It's kind of like saying certain things in sports, certain people are built better for a sport than other people are. It's the same thing with horses. They're longer back to shorter back. The way that the legs are built, their necks, different things like that can make a horse. And some of the bad attributes can be like a small heart, a small nose, different things like that. Bent legs can put a lot of stress on them and on their joints, which make them not be able to give as much. Next up is patterns. Every pattern has the same maneuvers in it, just in a different order. And so we'll go over some of the maneuvers in the patterns. First off, you have circles. Circles are performed at a lope, and there are big ones that are faster paced, and smaller ones that are slower paced. And they all start and begin in the center of the arena, or start and end at the beginning of the arena, which is usually right in front of the judges. Then you have lead changes, which happen during the circles, and it's when you're changing direction. And it's when the inside leg reaches further forwards than his outside. Stop and roll back. Stops are basically where the horse goes to sit down with its hind end. The back legs become stiff and slide, and then the front feet pedal forward while the horse's head stays down and the mouth is closed, showing it in a relaxed but also a very flashy move for the sport. Rollbacks is after the stop, to abrupt stop. The horse lifts its front legs up, comes to a complete 180, hits the ground, and then goes into a lope. Then you have a stop and back up. Do the same thing with the stop, and then it's basically exactly what it sounds. The horse then backs up. You have spins after that, where the horse is in the center of the arena. It plants his back feet, and then basically goes into a circle around it. The faster it goes, it can lead the higher the difficulty for it. And that comes from Bob Loomis's book, Reining, the Performance in Horses. Then we can come to milestones. Milestones for the NRHA, which is the National Horse Reining, or National Reining Horse Association, and that was formed in 1966. And then in 1980, they had their first magazine published called Reiner. Then they had the Hall of Fame opened in 1986, and then jumping all the way to the year 2000 was the next big one, when they were accepted into the FEI, or the Federation Equestrian International, and that's the first, and that allowed them for international competition, and it's the first step. It's a prerequisite for joining the Olympics. And then next we'll talk about money, the different things that show how much the sport has grown. The first $1 million rider of the sport was Bill Horn, and he became the first $1 million rider in 1995. The next big accomplishment to me was the first female rider to earn $1 million in competition, and her name was Mandy McCutcheon, and she did that in 2007. And she, at the same time as becoming the first female, she was also the 10th $1 million rider as well. And now today there are over 20 million riders in the sport. Next up is horses in the sport. one of the big ones, one of the first big ones was Hollywood Done It. And in 1998, he became the third $1 million sire. And what that means is that the horses that he, basically his kids, that went into the competitions, the money that they earned is what that means, and how good of horses that he produced. And he was the first horse to hit $2 million, and then he was the first to keep going up until he earned $5 million as a sire in the sport in 2008 or 2007. The next great sire was Top Sell Wiz, who was always close behind Hollywood Done It, but then in 2007, a couple months after, he reached the $5 million mark with him. And then in 2008, he became the #1 sire in the sport. And he was the first and only one so far to reach 6 and 7 million as a sire. And then to show how strong his bloodlines were, his father, Top Sell Cody, was also a $1 million horse, a $1 million sire. And then Top Sell Wiz's son, Conquistador Wiz, is also a $1 million sire this year as well. That's 3 in the same bloodline in the generations. And that comes from where is it? NRHA1.com. And then to finish it out, we end up having from SilverSpursEquine.com. Reining has recently become an event at the Pan Am Games and the World Equestrian Games. And reining has received so much international support as a horse riding sport that it's likely to achieve Olympic status in the 2012 Summer Games. And I hope you enjoyed the speech. We went over what makes a good horse, a good reining horse. We went over some of the maneuvers and patterns, and we ended with the milestones of the sport. And I'd like to leave you with a couple things. If you've noticed the horses behind you, some of them are actually the younger generations in the bloodlines of Top Sell Cody and Hollywood Done It. And that's everything. Hope you enjoyed it, and very well.